Good morning. It's good to be here and to be with you. My name is Karen Hebel, and I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson's Worship Associate Team and the Director of Lifespan Faith Formation. Each week, this community comes together to participate in worship, music, and reflection. This is where we seek to have our hearts opened and our imaginations fired. This is the place that reminds us that we are deeply connected to one another and all living things. Even though our building is closed, we gather together for weekly online worship. At 11:30 a.m. on Sunday mornings, we also gather for social connection and the sharing of joys and concerns in our Zoom meeting. Please join us. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, welcome. This fellowship is a religious community grounded in the heritage and principles of Unitarian Universalism. We seek to create loving community, inspire joy and spiritual growth, and support courageous action. All are welcome, regardless of religious background, political persuasion, ethnicity, age, ability, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression. If you have a desire to explore questions of truth and meaning and are respectful of our diversity of people and beliefs, you've found kindred spirits here. If you'd like more information about this fellowship or Unitarian Universalism, please see our website, uufc.org. If you are interested in getting our weekly newsletter so you can get connected to our community for online social events, our weekly sharing of joys and concerns, and our collective efforts to support local social justice work, please reach out to the office by the email on our website. Today, we welcome a guest speaker, the Reverend Jim McKinley. Jim retired from the UU Fellowship of Hendersonville, North Carolina, a year and a half ago after serving 22 years as their minister. Before ministry, he did graduate work in ecology and conservation biology and worked for the Nature Conservancy as the Director of Protection Planning and Stewardship for the Florida office. After divinity school, he returned to conservation work before going into full-time ministry. During the pandemic, Jim enjoys paddleboarding and kayaking, studying guitar and Spanish, and learning his way into what he hopes will be a meaningful third act. He adds that he is glad that his daughter Hannah and her partner Jack live in Hendersonville for the remainder of this school year, and that he gets to share regular, socially distanced time with them. We are glad to have Jim join us virtually this morning, and we are glad that you are with us as well.
Hello, thank you for being here, and thank you for inviting me into this special community of yours. For my opening words today, I'd like to do a piece that you're probably familiar with. It's a poem, Wild Geese, by Mary Oliver. I think it's like a little pocket card for your wallet in these times. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. Let us now light the chalice, and we'll use words of affirmation that I understand you repeat every Sunday. We gather together in a spirit of love, with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another.
Here at our fellowship at this time of year, we have a tradition of decorating our Advent trees during our time for all ages. On each of the 4 Sundays of the Advent season, our children decorate a tree with handmade ornaments which reflect one of our Advent themes. This year, because of coronavirus, we have to do things a little differently, but we still want to honor our tradition and decorate our tree each week. Our first Advent theme this year is hope, and we celebrate this week by decorating our tree with these butterfly ornaments. Many of you may remember helping to make them. Why does a butterfly remind us of hope? Well, one thing that is special about a butterfly is how it becomes a butterfly. Butterflies don't start out with those beautiful wings, do they? They start out as caterpillars who don't have any wings, and instead of flying, they crawl around eating all the tasty leaves they can find. Then, when it's time, they build a special thing called a chrysalis. Inside that chrysalis, a wonderful change takes place, and in a few weeks, a beautiful butterfly emerges. When a caterpillar builds its chrysalis, it doesn't know for sure what is going to happen next. But each chrysalis is an act of hope, a hope for change, a hope for something beautiful to happen. It's fitting that in our first week of Advent, we think about hope. At this time of the year, many people are hoping and waiting for something. As the days continue to grow ever shorter, many of us begin to look forward to the time when the days will start to become longer with more hours of sunlight. We may be looking forward to celebrating the winter holidays with our loved ones. Although Advent usually refers to the coming of Christmas, there are many things that people look forward to in this season. It is a time of expectation and the hope of new beginnings, and we mark that time in our own special ways, with traditions like the Advent tree or special decorations. Maybe your family has a special tradition this time of year, like putting up lights all around your house, or a special menorah, or finding a Yule log. In my house, when my children were little, one of the first special things of the season was a favorite book. It's a book that I think most of us can relate to, especially those of us who are hoping for that first snowfall that means a day off from school, something that doesn't happen all that often here in South Carolina. This book doesn't have a lot of words to it. A lot of the story is told in the pictures, but they are wonderful images, beautiful pencil drawings. It's a gentle story, but it will also make you smile, or maybe even laugh. You probably know that not everyone stays awake for winter. Some animals, like bears and squirrels, for example, do what we call hibernate. They sleep through the winter when there's not enough food for them. So they may never see anything like snow or even know what it is. So, what might happen if one of them decided to try to stay awake to see winter for the very first time?
Waiting for winter. by Sebastian Meschenmoser. Winter is almost here, said Deer. I think it's going to snow. Snow? asked Squirrel. Snow, answered Deer, white and wet and cold and soft. Squirrel hasn't seen it snow. He usually stays inside in winter. But not this year. This year, Squirrel is going to see it snow. Any minute now. Waiting for snow is boring. But what if Squirrel falls asleep? He might miss it. Exercise, thinks Squirrel. Fresh air and exercise. Uh-oh, I think he woke somebody up. What is that noise? Oh, it's Squirrel. Hedgehog hasn't seen it snow either, but now that he's awake, he'd like to. You'll have to stay awake, Hedgehog. Uh-oh, wake up! Hedgehog doesn't think exercise and fresh air will work for him. Squirrel has an idea. What about singing? Sea shanties! Now who did they wake up? Bear has had it. No winter, no snow, then no peace for Bear. Bear will have to help Squirrel and Hedgehog watch for snow. White and wet and cold and soft, that's what Deer said. But what if the first snowflake has already fallen? What if it is lying around somewhere? What if it's already winter? Hedgehog found it, white and wet and cold. It's the very first snowflake. Winter will be wonderful when it snows properly. The first snowflake, Squirrel has it. It's white and cold, and inside it's a little wet. Winter will be wonderful. Bear is speechless, because what they have found is white and wet and cold, but not soft at all. It's a good thing that he has found it. The very first snowflake. Winter will be wonderful, but the snow is a little smelly. Oh, what's that on Bear's nose?
We now light candles for joys and celebrations of our community. We first light a candle for Paula and Jorge, who are grieving the loss of Jorge's oldest brother, Beto, who lived in Mexico. Jorge and Paula, because of the pandemic, are not able to travel back to be with family, and this is such a difficult time. And sadly, this is the second brother that Jorge has lost in just 18 months. Please keep Jorge and Paula and Jorge's family in your thoughts and prayers. We also recognize World AIDS Day. We remember those we lost, and we recommit ourselves to provide support and hope for those living with HIV. At the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, the gay male population was disproportionately affected. With claims that AIDS was God's retribution against homosexuality, these men were left to die. Yet it was clear over time that AIDS affected everyone. Men, women, and children died in America, throughout Europe, and most devastatingly affected the nations throughout the African continent. Unlike humans, AIDS did not discriminate. In the first decade of this disease, there was a staggering loss of life, and then medicines became available to stem the impact of the disease. What was originally a death sentence became a lifelong management of illness. Many people were living long lives who were HIV positive and also living for years at a time with AIDS. Right now, there are 38 million people on the planet who are living with HIV. And each week, 5,500 young women aged 15 to 24, mostly on the African continent, become affected with HIV. These candles burn for those I know, and the people you know, and all of those who are living with HIV. Over 75 million people have been infected with AIDS since the beginning of the epidemic. And of those, almost 33 million people have died. It may no longer be front page news, but this virus is still rampant in the world. So today I ask you to pause and remember to light a candle and be the change we long to see in the world. Today, we remember them.
Our meditation this morning is a loving kindness meditation. It was taught to me by a Burmese monk years ago. Very simple. I will say a line and then you'll repeat it to yourself. Usually we do it in silence, but you're at home. You could even say it out loud. And I'll move through doing that, leaving a space after whatever I say for you to repeat it. Let us enter into the spirit of prayer and meditation. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May my family be well, happy, and peaceful. May my friends be well, happy, and peaceful. May my teachers be well, happy, and peaceful. May my enemies be well, happy, and peaceful. May indifferent persons be well, happy, and peaceful. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May all that is be well, happy, and peaceful. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Our reading this morning is, if you had your hymnals, it's number 602. If There Is to Be Peace by Lao Tzu. You probably are familiar with it. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. As I said, Lao Tzu's reading is familiar to many of us, and like family, it's easy to take for granted. Yeah, we've heard that, and so we don't really then hear it. This time, as I've paused and reflected on it, if there is to be peace, I see it in a little different light. It illuminates new thoughts for me. First, notice how the transition is organized in pairs. Each pair is a move from larger to smaller. Peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. Nations, cities, cities, to neighbors, neighbors to home, home to the heart. Each pair is a move from larger to smaller, less personal to more personal. Each pair is a sentence, a movement of responsibility. Each pair moves from a possibility, a hope really, to a requirement or action, then to make that possibility real. Then there's a period, done. But then it picks up again. It moves onward and inward into what must be. What was the last action becomes a new hope that then requires another move, a new focus. You can't just sit there. If we only hear these words in passing, Our movement, the reading structure, can carry us over the depth and power of the simple insights such that we experience it as something outside ourselves, something beyond us. Movement without a rival, a journey without a home. We sort of say, yeah, I get that. Then and we get on with our day. So I invite you to sit with it and feel how it moves from outward to inward, from the whole world and the nation, all the way to you and your home and then your heart. Those are the places where you actually have some power. And I would say where your power is born, grows, and resides and is nourished. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. This final pairing is where all peace that is possible begins, with each of us, with each of you within you in our hearts. The progression or zooming in that began with a huge, seemingly impossible wish for peace in the world comes down to the local foundational hope or goal of peace in the home, which is to be accomplished by the personal action or practice of peace in the heart. Peace in the world resides in peace in the heart. In light of today's reflection, I realized after all these years that I wanted to add another sentence to the end, a new pairing, so that peace in the heart becomes responsible for itself, so that I feel both the possibility of and the responsibility for peace. Peace in the heart becomes me and who I am in my heart. Peace settles and then can shelter in place. The hope that I seek outside and beyond me becomes both the practice and the acknowledgement of the home that I am seeking. If there is to be peace in the heart, there must be peace in my heart. I wrote in my notes that this addition sounds obvious, redundant, and yet, if you think about it, it means everything. Amidst all that would take us away from ourselves, amidst the constant bombardment of outside circumstances, media, anxiety, and fear, the foundation of the peace that is to be is in me. It is mine. It must be. It must be with a capital B, a capital E. It must be in me somehow, some way. It must be brought into being. I gotta own it. Thank you again for asking me to come here today. Your invitation helped me pull myself away from the myriad easy distractions of our world in order to do the work and then realize the gift of organizing and deepening my reflections. You encouraged me. You gave me heart to be with myself so that I could then be with you. And for that, I thank you very much. Let me state what may seem obvious but needs to be said up front. Particularly now and in these times, these reflections are mine. They come through my extraordinary privileged life as a healthy, able, white, American male who is retired with what I need and who, as of this year, doesn't have to work for monetary living anymore. That's extraordinarily privileged. Any struggle I talk about happens within the context of my extraordinary privilege. Any insights come with and from that confession. I hope that they do have some general application for you and you find something in them useful. The reflections that I share this morning turned out to be very important for me. They have actually helped me glimpse love and practice peace within both my outer and inner difficulties. They've helped me reach beyond anger and fear and defensiveness into more generous compassion and understanding. The movements, however slight, are significant and real movements nonetheless. As we saw in Lao Tzu's reading, it is movement that is both a place of arrival and a point of departure at the same time. So, as I say this, I wish we could be together and share our thinking as a conversation. Back when we could make travel plans, and just before we all began our first real experience of having to shelter in place, I spent most of last December and the first several days of January with 15 women and men as part of a self-guided, self-supported raft trip through the Grand Canyon. We each did some of it all the time. Everybody cooperated and took turns. We each had to be sure that we always did our part for ourselves, our own routines, and for the good and safety and success of the trip and everyone involved. You couldn't make it without all of us making it. And over the course of the month, we celebrated the holidays and welcomed the new year on the banks of the Colorado River in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It was as challenging and as wonderful a trip as I've ever experienced. It was transformative. I now think of it not so much as a trip, but as a journey. And I almost backed out. I almost didn't go. I almost didn't participate in the journey that transformed me. 30 years ago, I'd worked a couple of seasons at the Nantahala Outdoor Center. I was offered a chance to work on a trip through the canyon then, but thinking I would do it another time, I went to Costa Rica instead. Life changed, and that time to experience the Grand Canyon never came back around until last year, when my daughter Hannah and her Adventure Treks co-workers and friends finally got one of the rare permits for a 24-day trip and asked me to go with them. I guess I'd never really let go of thinking that it might happen someday. But I'd always pictured that someday in a different season and relatively warm, even hot. I'd also never been confronted with what it meant to actually do something like this in my late 60s. The adventure I once knew better how to do way back when, and that had seemed simply exciting then, had become more unknown and concerning. But it is the Grand Canyon, after all. It is the Colorado River. And Hannah and her partner Jack were encouraging me to go. They tugged on me and gave me heart. And then how could I turn them down? How would I be with myself later if I didn't go? Oh, and did I mention anything about their permit being in the winter and for the whole month of December? I wrote the bulk of this reflection in May. It was a different time then. It was a few weeks before George Floyd was killed. We thought that COVID might be coming under control, and the November elections were all of 6 months away. Now here we are starting a holiday season with the virus still out of our control, many of our children out of school, our jobs altered, many jobs at risk or gone. We recognize that it's mostly people of color and women who have been and are disproportionately bearing the burden to keep what's working. And in the midst of all this, I'm going to share my experience, and then I'm going to propose that it touches on most of what December has become for me and has always been about at a deeper level. A level that is available to all of us. Hanukkah, solstice, Christmas, reminders of light, of hope, of a baby, reminders of the possibility and power of peace in the heart. moments to be kept alive by and in each of us. In fact, it is our notice and practice of such moments that make hope and joy real and bring them to life and keep them alive. We are the ones, there's nobody else. Such moments may not change the outside reality of our circumstances, but they affect how we might live in them. So I hope my reflections this morning help connect you to your heart and perhaps touch some of your grief and loss, your sadness and loneliness, your uncertainty and fear, whatever the realities of your world. For there to be peace, there must be peace in your heart, peace in my heart, in each of our hearts, at least in moments in our journey. And that is momentous indeed. About a week into our descent into the Grand Canyon, I was really struggling. I mentioned how much I don't like cold, and I hate cold and wet. And the canyon was every bit of both. The water temperature was in the 50s. The air temperature highs were in the 50s. Most of the day was in the shade of a low winter sun blocked by 2 billion years of rock. I was also new to outdoor adventures where I felt old. I didn't know how to trust my body in those conditions, and that affected then how I could trust myself. The rest of the group were all 25 to 40 years old, and most of them are highly skilled and experienced outdoor leaders. Camp routine and timing is second nature to them. I often felt like an outsider. I was dealing with not only the unknowns of winter and water, but also the social unknowns of how to be the older guy. That was all on me, but it was nonetheless real. I only really knew Hannah and Jack. And there was so much to do morning and night: boats, camp, food, personal gear, health, and hygiene. It sounds like a day in COVID for many of you. Even on days off, there was always all that and a river to run. I was one of the team and not sure I could keep up and do my part. I was alone in and with my thoughts. I was more alone than I'd anticipated. My aloneness and loneliness surprised me and caught me off guard. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to handle it all and make my way through. When I finally got the right moment to talk with my daughter Hannah, this all came spilling out. I feel emotional telling you about it. And the part I remember is that she listened. She made some comments. I wanted her to make some more. But then she said with simple, quiet emphasis, "Dad, you gotta own it. You gotta own it." That's the quote. Here's the paraphrase. You gotta make this yours. You gotta be you. You gotta be good with you. In my case, my circumstance, that was me and also my now 67 years. You got to feel it, do it, live it here and now. This was one of those a-hah moments that you hope for, where simple words make lasting impressions and carry bigger meanings. It was my wake-up call. It brought me back into me. In the middle of the Grand Canyon, there is no place to run. There is no way to get away. There are no distractions. There are no distractions to go off to. In the canyon, there is literally no way out, only through. No way out, only through. There's nothing else but you, no one else but you, and the river and the journey. You better own it. What follows is my commentary. That moment helped me stop and breathe and focus and feel my breath. I was alive and awake, and I was going to stay that way and somehow enjoy doing it. It was a move into mindfulness. Breathe in, breathe out. What had been swirling around settled into me, and I settled into it. Although I didn't think of it this way then, it was every bit a spiritual shift and a spiritual awakening. The realities hadn't changed at all, but my spirit had. My spirit, with which and in which I faced and lived my reality, had come awake and alive. By owning me, my mental fights and anxieties faded, and I got on with bringing more of what I had, which is, after all I can and all I have to bring. That is the power that is mine. I lived into the life in front of me more. In the language of Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh and his concept of engaged witness, I was able to notice my struggle, but not be the struggle. I was able to notice my fears and not be them. The more I practiced that mindfulness, the more the beauties of the canyon, the trip, the people, and even of myself opened before me and shone amidst the hardships. I enjoyed, that's N-E-N with a dash, joy. Put joy in where I was. There is a freedom that comes with owning who you are and what is in front of you. Energy is freed up to better deal with what you have to deal with. If in such moments you find yourself smiling even a little, recognize and value that smile. Don't discount it. Recognize it as both a gentle indicator and a generator of new life energy. As I said, nothing going on outside me had changed, and yet everything changed. I became less defensive to myself and my internal critical committee, and then less defensive, more generous, present, and available to others. I became less reactive and was able to respond. I stepped back less and engaged more. I became more response-able for that which I was responsible. I didn't look to others or changes in the circumstances to make it better, and I was always grateful and appreciative when they did. Here's a correction. The phrase "you gotta own it" can seem problematic. There's power and possession and history in it. Own alone can be a possessive word. I own that. But in this moment, the phrase came from my daughter Hannah, and out of her awareness, and I would say wokeness, and her love. I experienced this sense of owning with love all around it, surrounded by love. And I might replace own with embrace. You gotta embrace it. I use it with that sense. Embrace myself, hold myself in safety and appreciation. But I still think I need the swagger and push that saying own it gives. Own it. It brings me to attention in a way that embrace just doesn't quite do for me. When I say to myself in a moment, okay, own it, Jim, the smile that arises and the nod that comes with it captures the embrace. Got it. We're good. Let's go. To put this more in the language of the months that we sheltered in place, and that many of us are still doing in many different ways, the more I was able to settle into my reality, the more I owned it, I then became more my own shelter. I became more my refuge, even my own sanctuary. The more I embraced my reality, the more I was then able to be in me and respond to my situation, and the less I merely reacted to what was around me. I felt much less pushed around and defined by what I wanted to avoid or wished were different. In these months after the trip, I was surprised by how much the canyon had prepared me for the pandemic. There is no way out, only through. And we'll get through this together. Here are a couple of small examples that have become touchstones for what I mean. The Saturday when I drove Main Street for the first time after Hendersonville opened up, after we sheltered in place that first time, there were a lot of people, and yet on the whole street, I saw only one person wearing a mask. I felt myself starting to get tense. I started to get angry, feel threatened and excluded. I started to go global. Then I remembered to breathe and own it. You gotta own it, Jim. In that moment, the energy and fear and anger that had been building up drained away. I even smiled to myself. Main Street returned to being something to do or not, and only if I saw a way that felt safe. I haven't been back. I've checked on it, but I haven't gone there. The co-op where I shop for groceries is a different situation. I'm going to shop there. I have to get food, and at first they didn't require masks. I shopped first thing early morning. And that Sunday in May, as I navigated my way around a couple who weren't wearing masks, I felt my chest begin to tighten up. I thought about speaking to them, and then I remembered to breathe once I got a distance from them and own my situation. I took a moment, reversed my list and changed my route, and then I went and asked the manager to consider at least a 2-hour block once or twice a week where masks were required for shopping. It was a good, easy talk. Rather than fuming, I enjoyed waiting to see what happened. There were others who spoke about this too, and in a few days they implemented some changes. It felt good. And as I shopped, I didn't feel like someone was against me. I felt there were people who were working with me. How we shop and wear masks has changed several times since then, but I still think back to the small ways I felt myself becoming the agent of my own well-being in the midst of all that would seem to be otherwise. Last Christmas Eve was my first in 21 years where I wasn't leading an evening church service. No, I wasn't. Last Christmas Eve, I was on the banks of the Colorado River in the bottom of the Grand Canyon, sitting around a warm fire with a group of the finest people I've ever had the privilege of sharing such an adventure with. We were gathered in the most glorious cathedral of rocks and stars ever imagined. At some point, Hannah and I just got up from the fire and walked over to the river. In Hendersonville, near the end of the traditional service, someone always read Howard Thurman's The Work of Christmas, just before the congregation lights their candles and then begins to sing Silent Night. For the last several years, my daughter Hannah would walk up front at that moment and stand with me as the people lit their candles and sang their way out in the dark with the candlelight. But last year, she and I stood together on the shore of the Colorado River, looking up beyond the canyon and into the Milky Way. As we stood there, we remembered and spoke Thurman's words aloud. And so the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, he goes on to say even to rebuild the nations. And then the piece ends with language that reminds us of the writing of Lao Tzu from our opening reading. The work of Christmas, Thurman says, is to bring peace among the brothers and sisters, to make music in the heart. That is the foundational work we are called to do, to make music in the heart. Again here, like I did with Lao Tzu, I would add a small addition. To make music in the heart focuses in and becomes what? To make music in your heart. And to make music in your heart, you got to practice that music. You got to practice the song you know but you gotta own it. The work of peace begins. Your peace begins right here. In this powerful space, in this momentous moment of yours, peace, in this December, in your journey, peace be with you. And then, like our journey last year through the Grand Canyon, we will get through this. You will get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for sharing today. So much of your heart was poured into that story with such vivid detail of your experience last year, and we are so glad that you were here with us today to share that with us. Thank you so much. As we come to the end of our service, I have a few announcements. We're coming to the end of our stewardship campaign. If you still want to send one in, please do so this week as we tally our numbers so we can work on next year's budget. We know that support of UUFC comes in many ways, which includes time, talent, and treasure. So let us know what your ideas are for supporting UUFC. And another way to support UUFC is to support the staff. As we enter the holiday season, our focus sharpens to what we are thankful for and what we celebrate. And especially during the pandemic, we do not see all that the staff do. The staff supports its members, its friends, and the larger community in so many ways. And this year has presented unique challenges, and our staff has risen to the occasion with a creative and positive attitude. This is the time of the year when we let our dedicated, non-ministerial staff know just how grateful we are for their hard work. And we hope that you'll consider supporting the end of the year fund that provides a gift to them. You can do so by sending a check in to the office, or you can go to the Donate Today button at the top of our link on the website. And there'll be a pull-down menu and you can choose Staff Appreciation Gift. Another announcement is we have a service coming up at the end of the year, and it is going to be titled My Favorite Things of 2020. Kathy Crane is organizing the service along with Liz Branstead, and they are collecting statements, reflections, thoughts on what your favorite things of 2020 were. Your favorite methods of coping, your favorite creations, the things that got you through the year. Please be sure to communicate with them so they can include those things in the service. Look in the weekly connection for a connection to send an email to Kathy Crane. This month, there's a meal being provided at our daily rest mid-December, and details are in the weekly connection about how you can contribute to the meal itself. And stay online and connect by Zoom with so many things going on at this fellowship. Meditation will be back with Jeannie, and that will be on Monday, December 7th at 8 p.m. There's a link in the weekly connection to the Zoom meeting, and we are so glad to be able to have meditation back. There's also bingo each week, coffee hour after the services at 11:30 on Sundays. There's coffee with me on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, and parent chats that happen on Monday nights. So stay connected in whatever way suits you and ways that can feed you. We are so glad you are with us today, and may you go into this next week connected to this community.
Our closing words are probably familiar to you. They're from Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear. And the stakes are very high. But take courage. That is, take heart. For deep down, there is another truth. As we join hands together, there is another truth. You are not alone. Take courage. And now we'll extinguish the chalice with these words that are familiar to you as well. We extinguish this flame. But not the light of truth, not the fire of commitment or the warmth of this community. These we carry where? These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace.